Hello, good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the Introduction to GoGreen webinar. My name is Caitlin Southwick from Key Culture, and it is my great honor and pleasure to be joined today by some of my esteemed colleagues working on this very exciting Horizon Europe project. So what we wanted to do today was basically make a big announcement about the amazing work that we're doing through this project and invite you all to not only learn a little bit more about what GoGreen is doing, but also a little bit more about what Horizon Europe is. Because if you're anything like me, you may have heard a lot about these really impactful programs, but might not quite understand how they work or what the outcomes are. So the purpose of today's webinar is basically to just go through and introduce you to Horizon Europe a little bit, but mostly introduce you to the amazing work that you'll be seeing from GoGreen over the next couple of years. So GoGreen is an initiative that we will hear all about today, and I will pass off to my colleague Katrien to tell you a little bit more about it. But I just wanted to set the stage a little bit here, because when we're talking about green, we can talk about a lot of different things. And when we're looking at this terminology of what green or greener or sustainable conservation is, it can often feel confusing. And so this is one of the things that's really important for us to clarify in the GoGreen project is what does green mean for conservation and how do we achieve it? So the goals of this project, of course, are not only to tackle this in a collective and collaborative and co-creative way, but also to make sure that we're including everyone's input in this ideas of what is green, and then of course, creating new innovative technologies, materials, and methodologies for practicing green and greener conservation. I do want to stipulate, we are talking here about environmental impact, hence green or greener, and not sustainability. Sustainability is a larger scope of various interconnected aspects of the world, including social and economic impact. We will hear a little bit more how those relate to some of the concepts of greener conservation, but I do just want to clarify that we're not using the word green and sustainable interchangeably here. We're focused on green and the environment. So today's webinar is going to be, as I mentioned, an introduction of this amazing project. We're going to talk a little bit about each of the work packages. Now, once again, if you're new to the Horizon Europe scheme, you may not know what a work package is. I certainly didn't a year and a half ago. And a work package is basically a group of deliverables and topics and tasks that each of us are in charge of executing. So we're going to go through each work package today and hear about what amazing outcomes, innovative research, and very cool discoveries are being made. And then, of course, we're going to invite you to get involved. Over the course of the next 3 years, you'll be seeing a lot of different opportunities and invitations to help contribute to GoGreen in order to make sure that our outputs and deliverables are most valuable and useful for you. Everything from taking part in focus groups, to surveys, to research projects, through to being involved in co-creating the definition of green, we want to hear from you because, of course, for us, the most important thing is that we're able to produce something that is really valuable to this community. And consequently, the most valuable way that we can do that is to get you involved to make sure that we're all doing something that we not only care about, but has a lot of impact. So once again, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's my greatest pleasure to be moderating with my fabulous colleagues from all over the globe. And at this point, I would love to turn over to Katrien Kuhn, who is heading up this project, to tell us a little bit more about GoGreen, and then we'll be hearing more from our work package leaders. So thank you, Katrien.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Let's see my presentation. Is it full screen or presentation mode?
Presentation mode at the moment.
This is better, correct?
Perfect. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for the kind and enthusiastic introduction. My name is Katrien Kuhn. I'm the head of science in the Rijksmuseum and Professor Molecular Spectroscopy at the University of Amsterdam. And in his last role, I'm the coordinator of the GoGreen project. So I give a brief introduction about the GoGreen, and then we go to my colleagues for all the work packages. So the full title of GoGreen is Green Strategies to Conserve the Past and Preserve the Future of Cultural Heritage. And in a nutshell, GoGreen is about to promote preventive and remedial conservation practices based on green principles to spearhead the green revolution within conservation. It's a product that started last year ago, 1st of October in 2022, and it lasts for 4 years. So we're now in our 2nd year and lots to come, and very excited to share where we are with you today. We have several objectives or aims, and I would like to share them with you. So GoGreen aims to, first of all, to improve the definition what green means in conservation. Caitlin already highlighted the complexity of it, and this is something what we all together with you would like to improve. The second point is that we develop preventive conservation practices and green thinking decision-making model. Third, we aim to develop green materials and methods inspired by historical recipes and methods, biological processes, and green chemistry practices. Fourth, GoGreen aims to create new methodologies to evaluate greenness, including a prototype of digital web app that helps conservators evaluate the environmental impact of their actions. Fifth, to create policies for the use of green conservation in the field. And last and not least, GoGreen aims to develop educational modules and course material on green conservation for stakeholders. Of course, we don't do this alone. We have a large consortium with Here is the consortium with 13 partners spread over whole Europe, where we closely collaborate with each other. It's from academia to industry, from institutes, conservation courses. So we have a broad palette of different expertise and different type of institutes. And in the next image, if it works, you see the kickoff meeting where we see the consortium here, what we had here in Amsterdam. And in the meantime, this year, the consortium, of course, expanded with young researchers, PhD students, postdoctoral fellows, and more key colleagues. This shows the work packages and how they are distributed. And this is also what you will see you this afternoon. We start later on with work package 1, what is coordinated by the University of Amsterdam. What you see here, that is the project coordination and management work package. Then we have work package 2, what is led by English Heritage on green preservation of conservation, of green preservation and conservation. Then we have work package 3 and 4. Work package 3 is led by the University of Bologna, what is focusing on green cleaning methods. And work package 4 is coordinated by HESO in Swiss, where it is focusing on green stabilization technologies. In the center is work package 5, that focuses on analytical methodologies for greener solutions and interacts with work package 2, 3, and 4. And the outcome of these 4 work packages are incorporated in work package 6, what is developing the web app prototype. And all these work packages together feed again our work package 7, which is led by the Courtauld Institute in London, where the green education is developed. And coming back to work package 6, that is coordinated by IIT. And last and not least, and that's also why who hosted this webinar, is work package 8, communicating, dissemination, and explanation, where Caitlin has the lead. If you want to learn more of us, we have a website where we update all our activities and output, what you can see here. There's an email address where you can contact us. We have a newsletter, so feel free to email us that you can get the newsletter. And of course, all our socials are followed here on this list. And with that, I will give back the word to Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Katrien, for that excellent overview. It's always really nice to have kind of a structure standard of what we're going to be talking about today. So as mentioned and Katrien outlined, we're going to be learning about these different work packages and what you can expect to see. As you can tell, we have a lot of really cool things that are going to be coming out of GoGreen, including new cleaning methodologies, new stabilization techniques. And if you don't know what that is, hang out and we'll tell you all about it. And then, of course, basically what we want to do is help support the conservation community in making greener decisions, understanding more about what our decisions have in terms of impact on the environment, and figure out a way that we can communicate and work together towards a greener conservation field. So thank you so much again, Katrien. And if you don't mind, I'll ask you to stop sharing your screen. And I'm going to hand over to Micah from the UVA. Package 1, which may sound a little bit not as exciting as the others, but to be honest, it's one of the most important aspects of any Horizon project, the administration, project coordination, and management. So I'd love to turn over to Micah, and a huge thank you for doing all of this because it's a lot of work, and I'm really excited to get to share it with everyone today. Micah.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Caitlin. Can you see my PowerPoint correctly?
Yes, you're sharing beautifully. Thank you.
Perfect. So thank you all for joining. And as Caitlin mentioned, I will tell you something about Work Package 1 of the GoGreen project. But before we dive into Work Package 1, I just wanted to give you a very brief introduction into the Horizon Europe program and how the GoGreen project fits into that. So let's do that first. So Horizon Europe, GoGreen is a Horizon Europe project, and Horizon Europe is the European Union's key funding program for 2021 till 2027, and it is focused on research and innovation. And the complete funding program has a budget of 95.5 billion euros, and it is focused on tackling climate change and helping to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and also boosting the EU competitiveness and growth. And all legal entities of Europe and associated countries, they can participate within this program. So as Katrien already mentioned, that could be universities or research institutes, but also industry like small or medium-sized enterprises or NGOs. We can all participate within this project and within this program. And GoGreen is, as I mentioned, part of Horizon Europe, and it is part of Cluster 2 and part of the project topic, Green Technologies and Materials for Cultural Heritage. So now, without further ado, let's go into Work Package 1. Because that is indeed about the project coordination and management. And most EU-funded projects are collaborative projects in a form of a consortia, which is just a group of different organizations across Europe that are working together and that are being managed by the project coordinator. And in the case of, in the case of GoGreen, the University of Amsterdam is the project coordinator, and the project coordinator acts on behalf of the consortia and steers the project activities and monitoring the progress. As the project coordinator, there is this Work Package 1, and that is most usually executed by the coordinator. So the project manager, which is me for GoGreen, we act on behalf of the consortia, and we are in contact with the project officer of the European Commission. And on behalf of the entire consortia, we submit all the project outputs, we handle payment requests, we handle the funding, but also the reporting that is necessary for the European Commission, and all other documents. So Work Package 1 basically governs the structure and the governance of the entire project that is being done within Work Package 1. Caitlin already mentioned the deliverables, and they are, together with the milestones, they are key elements for project management. Deliverables are, for instance, reports that are being sent to monitor the progress of the project or specific tasks. So they need to be submitted to the European Commission so they can monitor how the project is progressing. And then we also have milestones, and they are more control points of the project that also help charge the progress. So they could, for instance, mark like a key result, or the project progressing into a new stage. Those are milestones, and they need to be achieved throughout the whole project as well. And as the project manager, we are responsible for submitting the deliverables on behalf of the whole consortium. So to ensure the efficient management of GoGreen, we undertake a number of activities, which consist of establishing a management infrastructure to monitor the day-to-day operation. And we coordinate the integration of all work packages using up-to-date communication tools in a collaborative environment so that everybody can work together online collaboratively. We also handle all the risks and contingencies if they might come up, and we facilitate the efficient communication within the consortia, but also outside. So for instance, with representation at events or meetings. Besides that, as I mentioned, we also engage with communication and consultation with the European Commission, and we monitor and control the funding. So the financial budgets and the resource usage that is also being monitored in Work Package 1, as well as the fund distribution to the consortia partners. And then finally, we also ensure the proper handling of any legal or ethical issues if they come up, and if they come up, we just make sure that they're properly dealt with. So that is actually a very short introduction into Work Package 1. Thank you guys for your attention.
Thank you so much, Micah. I have to say, I mean, as I mentioned, this is one of the most challenging parts of running a project is this administration aspect, but it's also one of the most exciting and important things in terms of just making sure that it all works. It works together. So it's a huge, huge testament. As we've seen, there's a lot of moving parts here. Can I just ask, what would you say is the biggest challenge running a Horizon Europe project?
I would say just making sure that you have a complete overview of everything that's going on. So just keep making sure that you are up to date with everyone, because there's so much going on within the project. Like every work package has their own things that they work on. And as the project manager, you just need to make sure that you basically know everything that's going on. And that can be challenging, but it's also very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's maybe one of the most exciting parts about working in this type of a project is that there are so many things going on, but also that you get to work with so many amazing people. So what would you say has been the most fun thing about coordinating this project so far?
I would honestly say like getting to know all of you guys and learning a little bit about what you guys do, because this is, for me, I'm not trained in this field. So for me, this is new. But it is very interesting, even though I have to admit I don't understand everything, but it is very nice just to learn a little bit as well. And it challenges me as well.
Fantastic. Well, we have certainly appreciated having you take the helm on this. And, you know, it can sometimes feel like a thankless job. So I would like to make it a thankful job and thank you for doing all of this. That's
very
fantastic.
welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Wonderful. And if anyone has any questions for Micah, please do feel free to pop them in the Q&A, and she will be around to continue the conversation throughout the course of the webinar. So a huge thank you to Micah. And very excited, as I said, we're going to be moving through our work packages today. So we're going to now dive into the main content of Go Green, and we're kicking off with WP2, Work Package 2. And I know that we've got Dave Thickett from English Heritage and his colleague Antanas, who is joining us to talk about Work Package 2. So I'm going to try and pin you guys. I think I can do multiple pins. Let's make sure I'm this technologically talented. There we go. And I'm going to pin myself because what we wanted to do today, because this is a really interesting and engaging topic, is to basically, instead of having a presentation, have a discussion around this. So I would love to first ask Dave and Antanas if you guys would mind introducing yourselves, and then we'll dive into Work Package 2. So David, maybe I can ask you to start.
Sure, I'm Dave Thickett. I'm the Senior Conservation Scientist with English Heritage, and we manage about 400 sites across England, looking after all types of heritage.
Amazing. I do have to say, if you're a conservator watching this, he doesn't need an introduction. But for anyone who's not a conservator, I think it's always nice to give some background. So thank you for joining us, Dave. And Antanas, it's great to have you.
Hello. Hi, Caitlin. Hi. I'm Antanas. I am originally trained as an archaeologist at UCL in London, but slowly transitioned into heritage science. And now I'm a conservation science fellow working together with Dave on this exciting project.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. So as I know, and everyone here is going to learn, Work Package 2 is about a lot of different things, but we're looking primarily at preventive conservation here. So Dave, before we jump into Work Package 2, could you tell me what is preventive conservation?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different things involved, but the short answer, it's managing or controlling the degradation of objects, not stopping but slowing, by controlling the environment around them and a lot of aspects of the environment, the amount of water vapor in the air, pollutant gases, particles, dust, insect pests, mold, temperature, vibration, and a few other things that I won't bore you with the depth of it, but that's the general idea.
Okay, fantastic. So it's basically everything in the environment that has to do with how it affects an object.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, thank you for that overview. And I think a lot of times as conservators, if we aren't actively engaging with preventive conservation, although I have to say I think everyone now does. If you're doing remedial conservation, it is important to remember that there are all of these other components that will contribute to a treatment. It's not just what solvent you're using or what brush you're using, but all of these things will affect how many times you have to treat an object, or what the treatment outcome will be. So can you tell us a little bit about why this matters? I mean, I think
Okay, you've
more to it than that.
Hey, you've kind of touched on it anyway. So I mean, I think preventive came out of a realization that we were, as a field, spending a lot of time treating objects, and that those treatments can be very complex, very time consuming, hence quite expensive, and then putting those objects back into an environment that caused the deterioration that we were treating anyway. So if you control the environment, you should have to treat less. And there's, many organizations have a feel for the balance of what it will cost to do their preventive conservation things. And if they don't do those, what it will cost in terms of more treatments having to happen.
So that obviously has an effect on sustainability, but maybe you can tell me a little bit more about that. What does that mean for sustainability?
Yes, certainly. And I mean, as has already been mentioned, sustainability means many different things. I've just mentioned economic sustainability, but within many institutions, if we're controlling the environment, and particularly if we're controlling it with air conditioning, that uses a lot of energy. And the studies have shown, where museums have tried to map this, that if you've got an air conditioning system, that's probably the biggest energy user of that whole site. And that energy to generate that energy, we are making at the moment carbon dioxide and other gases, and the climate emergency to do with overheating of the planet is driven primarily for that. So if you're running air conditioning, then there's an issue with sustainability there.
Okay, so in terms of supporting sustainability action, what does that look like, and how can our work at GoGreen and particularly WP2 help support that action?
Yeah, and we had a lot of discussions about this, trying to put the project together, what would be the best things to do, because we could easily have run 15 of these projects and not run out of research questions. But with that, what we've decided to focus on is that decision about whether I need to air condition a space. Can I do it with some methods that aren't as energy intensive, such as maybe heating or ventilation? Can I provide the control to the objects that need it in enclosures, such as showcases, frames, glazed frames, print frames, which there's a long history of, and we've got a lot of data to show those approaches are much more energy efficient and sustainable.
Okay, so for the institutions that have this long history of using HVAC systems, how do we help kind of steer in a more sustainable direction?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say almost every institution wants to be more sustainable. Many of them have net zero targets, etc. All of them certainly want to use less energy with the financial thing at the moment. And we're trying to develop a number of online calculators that will help people to make these decisions, and also some things about exactly how vulnerable your objects are. And there have been some approaches to this. I mean, we don't have air conditioning, and we've managed to cut our carbon footprint by somewhere between 40 and 50% over the last 10 years using some of the ideas we're feeding into GoGreen now. And other people's ideas, I should say. But there have been attempts. The National Gallery in Melbourne changed the parameters on their air conditioning from 45 to 55 to 40 to 60, which saved them about 40% of the energy they were using. And they proved it wasn't having an effect using a particularly sensitive analytical technique called acoustic emission.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I mean, I know that there's so much opportunity for savings, not only in terms of energy and carbon from updating HVAC system practices, but as we've seen, this is more of a sustainability issue. It comes to the environment aspect, but also the economic aspect, and in a lot of cases, the social aspect. So I think that's a really interesting aspect. So we're running out of time here. This always goes too quickly. But I was wondering, can you give us just a couple of things that you're going to be working on in Work Package 2 that our colleagues in the audience can look forward to seeing?
Okay, so I mean, couple of highlights. So the work package is large. There are many people involved, but couple of bits. We're looking at what we call a damage function for steel or iron to predict how damaged it will be, and hopefully move away from these tight RH bands or very tight pollution levels. And we've recently published some work looking at glass to pick out the 10% or so of glass that actually is unstable and needs really tight environmental control, as opposed to the 90% that doesn't. But the key is being able to tell whether the piece of glass in front of you is going to be fine for the next 100 years if you don't do anything, or is going to be really bad if you don't do something.
Fantastic. Well, that's really exciting. I think everyone here will agree with me that I'm looking forward to seeing that, because it sounds very useful. So a huge thank you, Dave. And I'm so sorry I've been grilling you, but I would love to hear, Antanas, would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the project as well?
Right. So, well, I'm working with Dave on WP2 and another package. I handle a lot of the groundwork at the moment. So all those samples that need to go out into sites, all those analyses that need to be done, I collect all the data, and soon enough, we'll have 1 year since we've exposed some of the samples that we're using for the damage functions that they've said. damage against time. And hopefully soon enough we'll have some of these results to show, perhaps to share. Yeah, it's very exciting. Every week you do something new.
I think that's one of my favorite things about these projects is that they feel long because, you know, this is a 4-year project, but actually they go by so quickly because there's so many exciting things happening. So that's really wonderful. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know that we had a question in the chat about the publication for the Melbourne example, and thank you, Dave, for answering that. I know that this was done by the Getty Conservation Institute, and there is some information from the researchers who were involved in the new BISO reframe. So I will post that in the chat in a little bit. And, you know, I think it's a very timely thing for us to be talking about these HVAC system updates because it's really pertinent and on everyone's mind. So excited that the preventive conservation aspect can be incorporated into our Go Green project. So a huge thank you again to Antanas and also to David for joining us today. I'm going to unpin you guys, and I would love to now get into a little bit more of the let's say, hands-on aspects. So, of course, we know that conservation is a holistic game, and we are not only looking at the preventive side, but we're also looking at treatments. So it's my absolute pleasure to be joining today by Silvia Prati from University of Bologna. And Silvia, tell us all about green cleaning.
Thank you, Kathleen, for the introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it? This is the host. Okay.
Perfect.
Can you see it? So first of all, thank you for the introduction. Let's introduce myself. I'm Silvia Prati from University of Bologna. I'm a professor of chemistry for cultural heritage at the Department of Chemistry of University of Bologna, and I'm part of the teaching staff of an international master degree on science for the conservation and restoration of cultural heritage. And I'm going to present you the aim and the activities that we are conducting in the frame of the work package devoted to the cleaning methods. As all of you know, cleaning is a very challenging operation since it requires the selective removal of very thin unwanted layer from the surface of cultural heritage, being aged varnishes on paintings or patina formed due to the action of pollutants on metal, or vandalic acts like the one applied on graffiti. And this operation, as you know, is challenging because these layers are very thin in thickness, in the order of few microns, and may have a chemical affinity with the matrix that has to be supported. So the method should be selective because it has to selectively remove the unwanted layer without affecting the above cultural heritage. And so far, restorers employed chemical agents like organic solvents that has some drawbacks in terms of toxicity, first of all, but also of environmental sustainability. And to this extent, in the aim of the GoGreen project, we decided to focus the attention on two topics. On one side, the removal of aged synthetic and natural varnishes from paintings. On the other, the treatment of tarnished metals, in particular silvers, by developing green solutions that take inspiration from historical recipes in which natural materials were employed, or that make use of bio-based materials developed in the frame of the green chemistry strategies. In the frame of the project, we are debating, as Caitlin and Catherine already mentioned, on the meaning of what is green. And the aim of this work package is to define the greenest solution for this type of problems, but also considering the action of the methods on the cultural heritage artifacts. And it is also an aim of the GoGreen project to define what are the key topics that has to be considered for the evaluation of restoration procedures, and to develop, in the frame of another work package related to the methodologies, method that allow to measure the efficacy of the methods. And as regard cleaning procedure, the performance of the methodology is not just the cleaning efficacy, but also the possibility that the method create side effects on the object, the ease of use of the methodology, and also the application time can be very important also from a logistic and economic point of view. So the aim is to consider all these parameters together and find the greenest solutions. I just want to show you some very short example of what we are doing. For instance, for metals, after a long survey on the historical recipes available for the treatment of tarnished silver, our researchers are studying some methods, particularly in this example, wine lees have been used to produce a sort of paste that is effective in the removal of tarnishing from silvers. And an example for paintings, we are trying to develop green solutions based on the use of green solvents like the methyl carbonate or gamma-valorolactone, which are solvents widely employed in the field of chemistry because they are obtained from biorenewable sources. And besides the choice of solvents, it's quite important to choose the way in which the solvent is delivered to the surface and to allow a very superficial and controlled action. We decided to focus the attention on materials, advanced materials obtained with a technique called electrospinning, which allow to obtain non-woven mats with a micro-nano porosity that exhibit on the removal of varnishes a peeling off effect, meaning that the mat is put in contact with the surface to be treated, and after letting the material in contact for a few minutes, you can remove the mats with the varnish already embedded in it, avoiding any mechanical action. So the result is that thanks to the micro-nanoporosity, you can have a very controlled action, a very superficial, reducing the amount of solvent needed for the treatment and reducing also the wastes produced by the cleaning treatment. This is a preliminary result obtained on a real painting provided by Utrecht for our research studies. We are working in parallel, involving different partners, studying lab-scale products developed with biopolymers, and in parallel with the collaboration of Sati, which is a factory producing electrospool material, we are developing solution at an industrial level which can be scalable in the future. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to produce curiosity in you for our research activities.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Silvia. If anyone has any questions for Silvia, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A and I can relate those to her. So Silvia, in terms of green cleaning, we have a question from the chat. Will your solutions be published?
Yes, so we have published a paper that has been accepted a few days ago, studying the cleaning mechanism of our materials and explaining the peel-off effect. The first mats that we have produced were made of nylon, but now we are working on a bio-based solution. And so the result that we are obtaining with this second type of greener material will be soon published.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And what publication or should we be looking out for those?
I can put in the chat the title of the paper that has been already accepted, and for the other paper that are under production, we will upload in the GoGreen site all the reference to.
Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. Yes. So all of the research that is done through GoGreen will be shared on our social media accounts as well as on our website. So please make sure to follow us on socials and also subscribe to our newsletter. I'll repost in the chat the links to do that. And then that way you can be kept up to date whenever we publish research or information. So thank you, Sylvia. I'll share that as well. And we had another question. Sylvia, would you mind repeating the type or names of the solvents that you were talking about for varnish removal?
At the moment, we are using dimethyl carbonate and gamma valerolactone as pure solvents, or also mixture of the two.
Okay.
And
would you
we
mind
are
also popping that in the chat just to make
Sure,
sure that we
sure.
have the spelling right? If you're anything like me, you might misspell that. I'm not good at spelling. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and I think it's really exciting to see that there is, so much already being done in terms of looking at green solvents and also greener cleaning methodologies and technologies and materials. So looking forward to continuing those conversations within our community. And of course, as I've mentioned, that's a great conversation we can continue to have for the community to engage with on our social media. We really like to have our socials be not only a place for giving information, but exchanging information. So please feel free to keep that up. And I've popped that. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I've popped that in the chat for everybody. Are there any other questions for Sylvia on green cleaning at the moment? All right. Well, once again, if you have continued questions for Sylvia, please feel free to use the Q&A, which all of our panelists are monitoring, so we can continue conversations in there. And I would also like to let everyone know that in addition to this initial introductory webinar, over the course of our Go Green project, every work package will be hosting their own individual webinar. So at some point, you'll be able to join Sylvia and her team in learning more and diving deeper into all of the science behind these exciting research projects. So a huge thank you to Sylvia. Super appreciate you joining us. And I would love to now go into our other work package looking at innovative solutions for green treatments and invite Edith Joseph from the University of Applied Sciences and Arts in Western Switzerland to tell us more about green technologies in conservation and protection. Edith, please, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Did you see my full screen? I think so.
It's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to this webinar introduction of GoGreen project. I will in particular talk about how we can develop green technology for remedial conservation of archaeological glass and metal objects, or let's say glass and metal in general. Let me switch. Yeah. Okay. In this work package, we have different partners, and all are developing unique research lines that are linking to heritage conservation, green chemistry, and biotechnology. And the idea is to preserve this archaeological heritage for next generation. And this will be possible only with the application of green and sustainable approaches. So for this, we are exploiting, I would say, simple chemical reactions that are observed in nature. The first one is surface fractionalization. And the idea behind this is to consolidate glass. You can think about also, for example, like the butterfly inspiration. And for metals, in particular copper and iron, our idea is to base our process on biomineralization. So biomineralization is something that it is produced in nature by different living organisms. You can think, for example, about the egg shell that are produced by some sorry, I have a birds. It will come again. And also, apart from biomineralization, maybe some of you already have heard about bioremediation, and the idea behind is to remove harmful compound, and it is widely used, for example, in agriculture to remove pollutants. So let me go a little bit more in detail and to start with glass. How we can do this and what is the idea, the solution we think could be a good clue here. It's to how we can repair glass with glass. And here we will propose some syntheses that are quite versatile, and the idea they are based in aqueous solution, so based on water, and they use the production of silicate nanoparticle. So this nanoparticle can be tunable, and you can also adjust, in fact, according to the refractive index, for example, of your glass, and so on. And the most protective property behind this is the hydrophobicity, if you prefer. And we will make also some connection bond between the glass and this silicate nanoparticle. Moving to copper, I was talking to you about we are using biomineralization in this case. What we are using is they are mold, I would say fungi, and the fungi do not like copper in general, so they tend to protect themselves. But doing this, they produce a compound that are called copper oxalate that indeed is protective. That's meaning it avoid the continuation or corrosion to go on. And such treatment allow also, of course, a better conservation, not only for archaeological objects that we are studying now in this project, but also outdoor monuments. So it's really related to the metal substrate. Here you have an example of a small Osiris statue that have been treated in the past. So it was before, and this statue has some issue with chloride efflorescence, so with some salt getting out of this statue and being damaging this small artifact. And this is the result after. The same idea is also applied for iron. In the past, we have studied different bacteria, but also yeast that are a specific kind and group of fungi. And the idea is that they transform rust into a layer which is protective and it, of course, not anymore corroding the metal artifact. In this case, we're producing some iron phosphate that maybe some of you, if you are working in metal conservation, know, because it's normally we are using also phosphoric acid to do in this and to make a phosphatation of the surface. So I don't want to bore you too much with much science. I think the picture just make themselves speak. And I would just want to, if you want to let you know, as Catherine was introducing, you will have also specific webinar of these work packages. So question is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edith. That's fantastic. I always find that these innovative techniques can be so challenging to understand for a person who is not a scientist. So I really appreciate the very clear overview. Does anybody have any questions for Edith about the materials that are being developed or the approaches? If you do, please feel free to pop them in the chat. I would like to ask Edith, where do you get your inspiration? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of different ways, but I was particularly interested, you talked about like biological mimicry almost. Could you tell me a little bit more about, where the inspiration comes from?
Oh, no, just observing nature. We are part of the environment as well. So why not taking part of it and get used of it? So I would say it's a nice exchange of matter, and we are not just here to use the environment, but also to get profit on it. And yeah, it's just observing in nature, and there is a lot of process, chemical process, in fact, occurring in living organisms. We were talking about eggshell, for example, or butterfly. It's, yeah, everything is chemistry behind. Don't be afraid of chemistry.
I think that's very wise advice. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have another question in the chat. We were curious, when was it that conservators reformulated their processes of cleaning and restoration using other than natural or ecological techniques and chemicals? That's a great question. And I don't know if anyone else has a thought on this, please feel free from our other panelists to jump in. Edith, though, do you have any thoughts on this particular question? When did we start moving away from ecological techniques? And
well, green chemistry exists since very long decade. I would say at least 2 decades, even 3. It's in the 70s, so even more. But after, the 1970s, when there was this industrial change also and crisis, let's say, people starting to think about green chemistry. And in conservation, I know it's a more recent topic, at least what I heard. I don't think I know all about this, but there was also this direction going into slow conservation. And I think everything is connected. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd actually love to open up this question to the rest of the panel. So we've seen this, we had this transition indeed. There was, for the longest time, especially historical methods, it was using natural materials. So when did we switch to the more, let's call them ungreen practices? And now, of course, as we're kind of seeing this transition back, but I'd love to hear thoughts from anyone about this process. This is really interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at sort of Artgen's book at the whatever it was, 1900 or just before, there's a real mixture of materials in there. And I think conservators have always looked for better materials, and a lot of the industrial materials promised or said that they were going to be better. Some of them were, some of them certainly weren't, for other reasons we didn't expect. So I think there's always been a desire to improve the work that's been done, and it seems quite early on that certainly some conservators were, even though we weren't calling them that then, perhaps were looking at new industrialized materials and seeing how they could work.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Would anyone else like to jump in?
Well, I guess with the introduction of petrol-based chemistry, a process started without sensitivity towards the effect on the environment. There was probably an enthusiastic behavior towards the introduction of new materials produced from petrol. I guess this is the reason why we move from natural-based products to these new materials. On which you can tailor the property by synthesis. So I guess this is the reason why there was this change.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Gwen, did you have something to add on to that, please?
Well, I did, but I see March has put something in the chat, and I think she'd be much better placed to speak. I just wanted to mention that just because something's natural, of course, doesn't mean it's safe. So I think quite a lot of the movements that came, there might have been quite some rather unpleasant chemicals used that had been naturally produced. So I just wanted to mention that, but I'll leave it over. I think you should concentrate on what March has said.
Yeah, and I think just following up from that and probably linking to what Marcia was saying, it's not all historical techniques and materials are, quote, sustainable from either an ecological or environmental or economical or social standpoint. There's a lot of, for example, talk about using agar, which is, should be a sustainable material from the sense that it's natural, but because it's over farmed, because of, the gummy bear industry, it's not, it's actually becoming an endangered species, so to speak. So there are other factors to take into place. But yeah, I'm just going to read out for everyone what we're talking about in the chat for anyone who's watching the recording. We're talking about this time zone, it's this kind of 1950s. And of course, PEG started to be used in the 50s and 60s for waterlogged organic archaeological material. And it, really was indeed, as we've been discussing, the introduction of synthetic polymers in the industry. And Marcia was mentioning about paintings conservation, that it was already in the 19th century that more highly refined and industrial produced chemicals started being mentioned in books with advice on cleaning paintings. And at the same time, natural materials continued to be mentioned. And the transition to scientific conservation occurred gradually with the same developments during the 19th century. And of course, the establishment of the first institutes focused on scientific methods for conservation in the early 20th century, with further steps in the 1950s. So it sounds like this was, this wasn't just like a one day we woke up and we're like, oh, let's everyone use paraloid. This is great. But more of a, as Dave was mentioning, this kind of, inherent desire for us to be always seeking for the best. So, and I'm personally excited that the best now, by definition, includes considerations of health and safety, includes considerations of economic accessibility, and includes considerations of the environment. So really, really interesting conversation. And thank you so much for the question. I look forward to continuing to ponder these things with everybody. So, and thank you so much, Edith, again, for introducing us to protective elements and how we can get inspiration from natural products and procedures, and use what's called biomimicry and imitation of nature in order for us to find processes that can help us preserve our collections. So really excited to continue to see what comes out of Work Package 4. And as Edith mentioned, and I will reiterate, if you'd like to learn more about Work Package 4, we will be hosting a Work Package 4 webinar. And of course, feel free to follow us on all of the socials and newsletters and websites for continued information. So a huge thank you, Edith. Fantastic. So keep the questions coming, everyone. But in the meantime, I would love to turn back over to Katrien, who's going to introduce us to Work Package 5. So Katrien, if you wouldn't mind taking it away. Oh, you're on mute, but we can see your screen.
Today's always challenging, correct? These online
Perfect.
platforms.
We love technology.
Yeah, exactly. So you see my full screen, I assume, not my notes.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. We can see your full screen.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I think it's first I want to recognize that I'm presenting this Work Package 5 on behalf of Loïc Bertrand from Paris-Saclay. He is leading this task, but could not make it, unfortunately, with us today. So I'm just standing in for him. And this work package is centralized about methodologies of greener solutions. And referring back to the nice discussion we had about when synthetic materials came up and natural materials, I think measuring is key in what we're doing and trying to develop. So if I go to the next slide here, it's already quite clear that indeed Work Package 5 is in the heart of GoGreen, where if we develop greener methodologies for cleaning or cleaner stabilization or for preventive, you also need to have new methodologies to assess what we are doing. So we can develop things, but we also need to study what is the effectiveness, what is the impact, and that also asks us for very advanced technology, but also very low tech of technologies. And that is what this task is about. And if you summarize it, we can see this task in four categories. The first one is trying to develop computational approaches to expand the ability to track changes occurring in materials for preventive conservation purpose using artificial intelligence here. The second is more the 2D area, so surface scanning protocols to develop indeed new methodologies to assess the effectiveness of treatment in the surface 2D area. The third one is 3D imaging protocol. So if you apply indeed what we saw seen in Work Package 4 before this work package, how effective is the consolidation, and can we identify volume distribution of stabilization treatments, but also the penetration of cleaning agents. And the last, we use very high advanced techniques how do they translate to more traditional methods we are used to use in conservation studios? So how do this practice can be translated to us to the museum floor? So this work package is composed of 4 tasks or 4 focal points, as I shown you in the previous slide, and to briefly really dive a little bit more into these 4 tasks. And again, I invite you for the webinar on work package 5 later in the coming period, what is hosted by Loïc himself, so we can go much more in depth here. This is the first task where we use these computational tools with artificial intelligence to really monitor the crystalline of glass, or really do early warning system to prevent the crystalline of glass and to evaluate if glass is healthy or at risk. The second task here is to evaluate the effectiveness of treatment at the scale with treated artifact surfaces. So here we use a new technology, photoluminescent spectral imaging, what is developed for the assessment of efficiency of the varnish removal, as Sylvia presented in work package 3. And we do visual appearance monitor, but also need to optimize image data and imaging data and procedure here. The third task is focusing on 3D assessment, where they identify volume distribution of stabilization treatments and the penetration of cleaning agents. Here we focus on glass and the glass consolidation and the removal of organic coatings. And secondly, we use semi-quantitative micro and nano CT with X-ray and X-ray Raman technology. So really the cutting edge techniques applied on cultural heritage to really gain new information about 3D penetration in consolidations. So here, new ways and avenues are explored to understand better the impact and the assessment of these conservation treatments. And the last task is making the translation from all this high-end technology to more the laboratory. So can we make a translation about the tools we're using in the museum floor? How can we improve them? How can we indeed see what are the limits and the possibilities, and how can what we can learn from the other tasks, the high end, bring into the conservation studio? And this is where this task is focusing up. So in a nutshell, I present a little bit what work package 5 is. It's focusing on methodology of greener solution. And if you want to learn more, join Loïc's work package 5 webinar later in the coming period. Thank you. It's back to you, Caitlin.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Katrien. Super appreciated. And yeah, I think there's so many interesting aspects of this. And particularly for me, I'm looking forward to hearing more about how we can translate some of these really fancy methods into practical conservation for those of us who don't have access to the big, expensive equipment and machines. So really excited to continue the conversations there. And we did have a question in the chat, which I'm very excited about because this sets us up perfectly for our next work package. And the question was, what are the tools that could be used for the sustainability assessment? So I don't think I need to introduce answer that without first introducing our next work package. But I would love to hear from Roberta about the web app that GoGreen is developing. And then Miranda, I would love to continue that discussion after this next presentation. So without further ado, I would love to hand over to Roberta Zanini from IIT.
Thank you, Caitlin. And can you hear me and see the presentation correctly?
Yes, you are visible and audible. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Caitlin, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Roberta Zanini, and I'm a conservator scientist, and I'm a postdoc researcher of the Center for Cultural Heritage Technology in Venice. That is one of the centers of the Italian Institute of Technology. And now I'm going to introduce you another action involved within GoGreen project designed for reinventing conservation practice towards environmentally friendly and human healthy solutions. So indeed, one of the main objectives of GoGreen project is to develop a prototype of a digital support app that enable conservators to take informed decisions for considering environmental impact in relation to preservation, cleaning, and conservation treatment. And but why do we need an app? First of all, this app will support conservation in getting information about the greenness of the treatments to be applied. And in this way, the digital support app will help conservators evaluate the environmental impact of their action and support their search for greener alternatives. And the primary aim of the digital support app is to give an understanding in terms of the greenness of the treatments that a conservator would like to use. And in this holistic approach, the app will not give a preference of using one treatment instead of another, but it will give an evaluation in terms of greenness. Therefore, it will offer a comparison between a material, individual material or treatment based on the assessment of selected green parameters within GoGreen project. And the design of workflow is still ongoing, and it involves the conservators entering the materials or more complex treatments that they intend to use, and the app provides a score for each parameter, for each material or treatment that are evaluated for all the green parameters selected. As final output, the conservators so have a comparison between materials and the awareness of which treatment he intends to use is greener. So thank you for all the participation and the attention.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Roberta. So I would love to hear a little bit more about the app. And if anyone in our audience would also like to ask any questions, please feel free to pop those questions in the chat or in the Q&A. But Roberta, in terms of the app, when is that going to be ready for us to play with?
Okay, yeah, the prototype of the app will be ready at the end of the project after the validation and the testing phase. That is, it will be done by a consistent group of stakeholders. So we have to wait for the end of the project.
Fantastic. I'm going to, and I think that's my biggest question, you know, when is this going to be ready? But I see we've got some really great questions coming in the chat, and I'd love to open this up because this app is, of course, a very collaborative project. So I know that we've got a lot of, we can have input from all of our consortium on this. So really great question from Amandine. Will you need conservators to test the prototype? Roberta?
Yes, sure. We have the testing, the validation, and the testing phase at the end of the project. It will be a complete task of this work package. So yes, we will need the conservators to test the prototype of the app. Sure.
Yes, please, I think is the short answer for that. And thank you for the additional information there. If anyone is willing to be a tester of the app, please, I guess you can either drop off your email in the chat for us, or please sign up for our newsletter, and that will put you on our mailing list, and we can send out information when we're ready for the test app. Is that the best way to get in touch, or how can we volunteer? Oh, Roberta, is there another way to volunteer, or is that okay?
Yeah, no, there is another question on the chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to finish this question first. Okay, so yes, if you would like to volunteer, please sign up for our newsletter. And of course, if you and we'll be making announcements when we're ready for testing. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And there was another question indeed, and that was about how do you measure a greenness of a conservation method? Which parameters are considered? That is an excellent question.
Yes, we are considering a lot of parameters in terms of toxicity for the environment and for the human health, or considering the in terms of energy required and used for the treatment itself, and other parameters that are more correlated to the practice of conservation. So, for example, the quantity of material used, or the availability of the products, or the number of treatments needed for the conservation strategy. So we are a lot of parameters that we are considering for the evaluation, the greenness evaluation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And that's actually a perfect segue into our final presentation today. And we will open up time at the end of the webinar for more discussion and more questions. But of course, as we start seeing how these pieces all fit together, we may have more questions and more discussion points. But how do we define what green is actually? Because of course, there's the measuring of greenness, but what indeed parameters included in that? So without further ado, I would love to turn over to Gwen Fife, who is going to walk us through defining green and indeed how we came up with these parameters and what they are. So Gwen, I'll turn over to you.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
You are unmuted. And I
Super.
realized that I'm skipping from work package 6 to work package 8. So I do apologize. We're going to go back after your presentation, if that's okay. Sorry, Claire.
Yeah, I'm jumping the queue here, but I will start. Okay, can you see my slides? Oops, too fast. Wait a second. All right. You can see my slides correctly, I hope.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, as Caitlin said, it does follow on very well from work package 6, because included in the project is refining definition of green and defining the green standards and parameters. So indeed, what green means, we're trying to work out what green means in conservation and what would make something green in our approaches to conserving cultural heritage. And it's obviously a big task. And in approaching it, we have a framework of the linked parts in the project. And this makes sure there's a consistency and coherence between them. And these are the holistic definition, the specific parameters for defining green, which can be applied in material developments and also then by conservators in their decisions and choices. By which they can also then compare specific treatment materials and approaches. So outlining our strategy to do this, we've been considering the origins of green, as you've mentioned already by many of the consortium members, and that relies on the principles of green chemistry, for instance. And we're examining the current status and understanding of the green terms, green terminology that are being used within conservation, but also out with our field. And it's also been really helpful to research how other sectors, other industries have tackled and defined the green concept for their applications. So we started a database where we collected the published definitions and use of green-related terms in conservation for reviewing. And with this database, we're collecting associated literature, existing policies from our field, and also pertinent tools and databases. That includes those that are specifically designed for the field of conservation and others that could be potentially applicable. And we've also been carrying out surveys to obtain data and feedback. And an ongoing one is into the tools conservators use and the data they're seeking from them to make greener decisions, which, among other things, has really highlighted the strong interest for the tools being developed in the project. And at the end of the presentation, I'll put in the chat a link so that you can actually sign up for the focus groups and be involved. So I think in response to the one viewer who wanted to perhaps test the app. I will give the link in the chat. Meanwhile, in our approach to defining green, it's been really useful to look at the methodologies, as I mentioned, used in other industries. A key conclusion was to identify conservation strategic impacts or key impact areas, and considering the historical principles of sustainability. This means identifying links between conservation and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. And we could then make further associations considering the relevant critical policies, so the Green Deal and the WHO One Health concept, as well as professional guidelines, of course, and at the same time considering the complexity of conservators' decisions and applications. Now, tying this all together, we've workshopped within the Green Consortium. We've created a couple of work in progress definitions. We've also had amazing input from external experts and some researchers from our broader cluster, and also from some focus groups we've held already. So I'll just read out this holistic definition that we currently have. Conservation has a uniquely positive and powerful role to play in shaping a sustainable future. It preserves cultural heritage for current and future generations and increases economic and societal resilience. Cultural heritage is endangered because of climate change and environmental destruction. Assessing and adapting professional practices to help combat these ultimate agents of deterioration is therefore, in itself, cultural heritage conservation. A green conservation approach prioritizes the environment and human health through holistic heritage conservation decision-making. Aligned with conservation ethics and values, it allows for future developments in the conservation field and considers the entirety of consequences before, during, and after interventions. Conservators should actively advocate adopting a green conservation approach with support in accordance with the economic, social, and environmental pillars of sustainability. We've also condensed this to create another definition below, which links to the associated parameters. So, green conservation is not harmful to the environment or to the conservator. It's carbon neutral, zero waste, accessible, and available. Green conservation is an ideal which we strive for through greener conservation, which takes all these aspects into consideration in line with current and continuing research. Greener conservation practices encompass the decisions made within the context of any treatment or preventive measure, the materials used, the frequency of treatment, and long-term impacts. Greener conservation reinforces and furthers the positive role of conservation in the sustainability of our culture. And as I mentioned, this links to our current work in progress, green parameters. So in addition to our holistic perspective, we have, for creating the parameters, been thinking about those that are to be applied when creating new materials. So incorporating the principles of sustainable green chemistry, hazard and life cycle assessments in accordance with the Safe and Sustainable by Design framework from the EU. And this has given us a list of measurable quantitative parameters that can be used for assessing new materials, and also conservators can use to compare the already existing materials they might be wanting to apply in a treatment or considering to apply. But also included and highlighted in this list, you'll see our other quantitative and also qualitative parameters to reflect our professional requirements, and including the individuality of the artwork and specific circumstances. And as mentioned, this work on the definition and parameters is not something we're doing on our own. We've been incredibly indebted, and in the first place from within the GoGreen consortium itself and those in the cluster. We've been receiving great input all the time, and just past our first year and a bit, we're entering a phase of meetings with focus groups we're establishing. Our first ones are with follow-ups with researchers and conservators and conservation scientists. So I will put in here, we have a QR code, and you can automatically now sign up. I hope if the QR code works. I'll also put the link in the chat. The idea is really to have input from everyone in conservation who wants to be involved. So we'd of course love to hear from you. And if you want to just immediately sign up, that's fantastic. And we can put you in a focus group. If you're interested in everything you've heard today and you'd like to keep updated, you can also sign up for the newsletter. And so I think that's everything I want to say. I will, if I end my slideshow, stop
and I
sharing.
think you can stop sharing your screen.
And I will put in, I think I just shared this with you, Caitlin.
Yep, perfect. And I
You
will
can send
pop
it
that
to
in for
everybody in the chat.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Gwen. And once again, sorry to pivot, but I thought that the question was leading right into the heart of it. So I wanted to answer that now. And of course, we'll talk in just a moment. We'll hear from Claire about how we're implementing these things in education. But before we jump into that, I would love to hear, of course, from the audience, if anyone has any questions, and of course, to discuss a little bit about this definition of green, because I think that it's really interesting to all be on the same page and know what we're talking about. So I'm going to invite the entire group to be part of this discussion. And maybe we can start off with just more of a general question in terms of when we're talking about green conservation. You know, it's to date has had a little bit of unclarity, is that a word? A little bit of cloudiness about what we're actually talking about. So of course, everyone here has been part of this process from the beginning. And I'd love to open up the floor and hear about, you know, why we need to define green and what we feel as conservators this can help us to accomplish. So I don't know if anyone would like to start off giving their input on this topic of figuring out what green means to us as conservators. Claire, thank you.
Well, I think actually we could just relate back to some of the discussions we were having earlier about, you know, how we evaluate maybe natural materials versus synthetic alternatives, because one of the reasons that we might choose a synthetic alternative is that it lasts for a really long time and stays stable for a really long time. And so it lengthens out that retreatment cycle. And so perhaps we're doing our conservation interventions less frequently. And so when we're kind of trying to balance out all of these really complicated questions, we might choose a material that is maybe inherently less good for the environment, but lasts a very long time, or we might be trying to balance that out against a natural material that might need more frequent reapplication. So I think being able to really think about what parameters really matter to us and really define what green really means for us is just really critical in trying to make some of those decisions. I don't know if others would agree or disagree on that one, but that's certainly something that I was thinking about.
Brilliant. Would anyone like to build on that? I think that that Claire makes a really important point here, and this kind of goes back to what we were looking at Gwen presenting in the definition of green. You know, green conservation in being perfect may not always be attainable. And then, of course, we have all of these different parameters that come into play. And what weighs the most? You know, is human health more important than water usage? Or maybe it depends on the circumstances. So how do we think about that? David, I don't know if you had something you'd like to add, but I'd love to hear from you.
Just something to add, and I'm trying to avoid my builders, so things are, that's my background. I think one of the things that's quite telling at the moment is if you look on the internet trying to get information about green products, you will be told all sorts of different things by the manufacturers, usually highlighting the single aspect that they have an advance in. So I think there's a lot of benefit in us having a think as a profession about what's important to us, because we will be misled otherwise.
I think that's such an important point. And one of the things that the GoGreen project planning with this definition, once everybody here, including our audience and everyone who's watching this, are on the same page with what green means to us, is then trying to implement that into our field and doing that through membership organizations such as ICOM-CC and IIC and AIC and AICCM and all the acronyms. Also, of course, implementing it into the requirements for labeling something as green, having it be, you know, something that the manufacturers have to adhere to. So they can say, this is green according to the definition of green adapted by the conservation field. And that way we can avoid greenwashing, because indeed, I think we all are very conscientious of greenwashing, and that leads to something else called green hushing, which is another webinar topic altogether. But basically what we want to do is make sure that we're all being on the same page and ensuring that we're transparent and communicating in a way that is transversal across our field. So we have a great question coming in. Oh, sorry, please go
Maybe
ahead.
it's good to add, Caitlin, that we within the GoGreen, we are in this European Horizon consortium that the other two products, we also closely collaborate on the definition of what's green. So I think here as a field, we jointly join forces here to make a real impact.
Yeah, and that's such an important point, Katrien. And I think this is something that we also want to reiterate as a group. Go Green. This is not us telling the conservation field what is green, but this is us inviting the conservation field to collectively come up with this. And I know that the entire basis of this is about co-creation. And so that's why it's so important that we would like to hear from you all and invite you to be a part of this process and give us feedback and ask questions. We're just here to facilitate. We just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and ensure that that there's a transparent process here, but also that everyone has the opportunity to give feedback and input and be a part of this so that we can come up with a collective consensus on what we mean when we're talking about green. So fantastic. And would like to take this moment as well to give a shout out to our cluster partners, who is the Moxie Project and also Green Art. And yeah, indeed, we've been having some really exciting discussions with them about collaborating on a more holistic level, but also in terms of creating the definition of green. And I know that we've had some really productive and interesting conversations with our cluster partners, and now excited to open them up to the wider conservation community. So thank you so much for that. So anyone else have something to add before I go into our questions and that? Perfect. All right. So a question, and I think this is a great question. Would reapplication still be quote unquote green in 100 years? How do you as conservators deal with implementations for others to follow 100 years from now? That's a great question. Would anyone like to take that?
I'm happy to comment since I started, or Dave's also going to join in. That's good. Since I started this kind of thing about talking about retreatment and coming back in 100 years, and I think that's really important, the work that Gwen showed us, that thinking through not just the moment that we're in now, but also the long-term implications for decisions that we make. So now I think absolutely we have to wonder about what would still be green in 100 years, and it's hard to always build that future proofing in, but it is something we need to think about. But Dave, you've probably got something more sensible to say than I have.
Not more sensible. You kind of got some. I mean, there was a move about 30 years ago from reversibility to retreatability for treatments, with this acceptance that you are going to have to treat again, and how does what you're doing now influence that future treatment. But I think there's also, I would be amazed if in 100 years our definition of green was the same. I'm sure we will learn lots of things, and we'll probably have a few disasters where we thought we were doing something that was green, but it turned out actually it was really bad as we go along. So it will definitely change, I think.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. Of course, I always say we do the best that we can do with the knowledge we have. But of course, especially in conservation, I think our knowledge is increasing exponentially daily. And so indeed, what we consider the best now, even from a green perspective or from a conservation perspective, in 100 years may be very different. I mean, we see that in treatments that we used in the 70s. If anyone has ever tried to remove cellulose nitrate from a ceramic or a stone object, which I've spent many hours chipping away at, we know that we always have more to learn. So I think indeed, as Claire and David mentioned, it's really important that we keep in mind this idea that we have to be flexible sometimes, and we're going to make some mistakes, but we're also going to adapt and learn from it. And I think that's also part of the sustainability aspect in a more holistic sense, sharing our knowledge, sharing our resources, sharing our failings so that we can learn from it and improve. The best way there was a quote I read the other day that said, learn from others' mistakes. You don't live long enough to make all of them yourself. And I think that as conservators, we can definitely take some advice, heed that wisdom. It's very important for us to also share what's not working as well as what is working. And that's part of being sustainable. So I love that. Thank you so much, Julie. That's an excellent question. Were there any other questions for Gwen or for any of our other panelists about defining green? Let's see, and nothing's coming in at the moment, but I would love to encourage everyone to continue thinking about these things. And we'll, of course, open up for a little bit of more Q&A after our next presentation. But I think we've seen that there's a lot of really exciting things coming out of this project, from understanding what green is to new innovative methods, materials, decision-making processes, apps, technology, all kinds of fun things. So, of course, the biggest question, as we've touched on earlier, is, okay, how do we implement this? And I think most people agree, the best way to implement sustainable practice is in the training stage. So how can we integrate sustainability more into our training programs? How can we educate conservators about sustainability? And for that, I would love to invite Claire from the Courtauld to tell us all about WP7 and modules that we're developing through GoGreen. So Claire, thank you.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation and hear me okay?
Yes, you're perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name's Claire Richardson. I'm a senior lecturer at the Courtauld, and I'm also a paintings conservator. And I've just put this picture of Somerset House in London where I work, so that you can imagine me at work there, although it's not quite such a nice day as when this image was taken, but never mind. We'll move on. So Work Package 7 is all about green education for the conservation profession, and it's going to bring together all the work of the previous work packages that you've heard about today, and it will prepare teaching materials for the conservation profession. And these materials will be available online for use by educators in their work, but also for use by conservators who want to learn more about Go Green. So the teaching materials will be split into 4 main topics, and the first will be about leadership in green conservation. And I think this really touches on so much of our discussions today, which is about how can you really advocate for green conservation if you don't have a clear sense of what it means to be green and the most important parameters. So this first module about leadership and advocating for green conservation will be using the green definition that's been developed as part of the project. And it will also give an overview of all of the insights of the Go Green project for leaders and the future leaders of conservation. The second area of teaching is on determining material sensitivities. And this will really focus on the work that Dave has shared with us a bit about understanding how materials deteriorate by interacting with their environments. So it's using the important work of Work Package 2, which is all about determining the rates of deterioration for different materials in different conditions. And that will help us think about how we use our resources efficiently. The third area of teaching, which is really, really related to that second one, is focused on decision making. And so it's going to look at how we can make decisions for objects in the context of their environments, and then use our understanding of their materiality to understand the risks to them. And this allows us to tailor environmental controls, for example, in museums, as we heard Dave talk about, so that we don't waste energy and we don't waste resources. And this module will really aim to explain the green decision-making module and help embed green thinking in all aspects of conservation decision-making. The final module will look at the green treatments that we've been developing, and we've heard about them in relation to paintings, glass, ceramics, and metals. And it's going to describe how to use the green methods and materials to replace existing practices. And it will show how to use the specially developed web app to really think about treatment decision-making. And in this, we're also going to look at the work done on methods of assessment of cleaning, and so that we can reassure practitioners that the methods that we're recommending have been assessed for both safety and efficacy using the really cutting edge methods, but also think about ways that we can use low-tech methods in the conservation studio without access to all of the incredible analytical facilities that are available, so that we feel confident ourselves in using new techniques. So, in summary, Work Package 7 is all about getting the message of GoGreen out into the conservation profession, and it's for students, educators, leaders, and conservation professionals who want to know more about the insights of the project. So if you're interested in learning at what we're calling the GoGreen Academy, please get in touch with us and stay updated. And I've just put all the different ways that you can engage with the project here on the screen. And so I really hope that you'll find a way to connect with us and yeah, that we can share the work of Work Package 7 with you in the future. Okay, I think that's all I had to say.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And I'm just super, super excited that, these are outputs that are going to be input into the conservation community. So really looking forward to that. And once again, if anyone has any questions for Claire, or of course any of our panelists, please feel free to pop in the chat. I just wanted to ask Claire, because you were talking about advocating for green conservation. I'd love to delve into that a little bit more. But in terms of the availability of these modules, you mentioned that these are not just for students. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we'd also see it as something that can really be part of ongoing professional development. And so you can really, if you're interested and passionate to learn more, that it doesn't really matter what stage of your career you're at, you can really use this material. And particularly, we're also really interested that the leaders in the field of conservation, the people who can really advocate very powerfully at the top of organizations, can also use the material that we're providing to help them have really formidable arguments to put forward.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's such an exciting thing to think about. And, it is really all about removing your pen to invite everyone to be a part of this conversation. I think it is really all about being leaders for sustainability. And so much of what we do is not just about the decisions we make in our own treatment, but it's about the way that we communicate with our colleagues and what we're choosing to focus our research on, or what conversations we're having at conferences. And the more we can embed sustainability into that, the more awareness we can bring to the topic, and the more progress that we can make. So I firmly believe that it starts with education. And so I think, this is a just really exciting component of the project. So I would love to open up to the audience if there are any questions before we do a little final round of discussion here. But of course, if anybody has any questions on any of the components of the GoGreen project, now is a good time to ask. As has been mentioned a few times, and just a reminder, we will be hosting over the course of the next, 3 years, additional webinars that are specific to each individual work package. So, and it's really exciting. The next one, we're not doing these in order, by the way. It's going to be related to the relevant moments for our for the work that is being accomplished. So, a announcement now that our next webinar will be hosted on the 27th of April at 17 CET. So that would be 14. No, that's daylight savings now. 17 CET. So please keep an eye out for the registration link for our next webinar. That will be Work Package 8, where we will dive much deeper into the parameters of the definition of green. Gwen's going to go into more detail about how we developed these parameters. And then, of course, the actual definition. We'll be inviting continued participation. As we've mentioned, this is a co-creative process, which is why it's so important for us to have you guys be a part of it. So thank you for that. All right. So I wanted to just wrap up here with this idea of sustainability, leadership, and advocacy. And of course, one of the important things that we know is that it's not just about creating all of these magical things in our lab, but it's about implementing them into conservation and advocating on a larger scale for conservation to be leaders in this in the green transition. Because at the end of the day, it is in so many ways about us. And I firmly believe, and this is why I've literally dedicated my entire life to this, because it's culture that has the power to drive behavior change with our audiences and our communities and the public at large. And it's conservation that controls culture, because we're the ones who are telling the museums, okay, you have to maintain, this RH and this temperature. So we're the ones who are driving the conversation on climate control. We're the ones who are talking about, the lifespan of art and the sustainability of art. We have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for. And we have got to put ourselves not only at the table, but be the leaders of those conversations. So I would love to hear from everyone here today, if you don't mind. What does green conservation advocacy mean to you? And what have you done? Maybe some examples, a story that you'd like to tell, but you guys are all the leaders for green conservation. I mean, there's many more, of course, but you are some of them. And I would love to hear from you what it's like being a sustainability leader and what that looks like. So maybe I can start off with Katrien, since you're on my right. I'd love to hear from you, if you don't mind.
Oh, thank you, Caitlin. I think you impress us all by this question. So having in the spotlight. Now, I think you already stressed the importance, and I think what is so nice being in the lead of making a change. And I think the importance is also that we are glue with each other. So it's not only that we individually need to make a change, but we really need to do it together. So I think that's a strong point. And I have, of course, had the luxury of working in the Rijksmuseum, where they're fully aware that sustainability is important, but goes beyond lowering your CO2 print. It's much more implications in broader sense. It's also social behavior. It's about climate condition. It's about what are your collaborators. So I think if what we did not discuss so much here, it's about conservation, but it's also about conservation science. How do we do also conservation science in a more sustainable way? So it goes much more beyond what we see on our horizon. I'm very curious to explore the next horizons and draw the picture for that. So I think that is the biggest driving force, that we go beyond our horizons here.
I love that. It's challenging the status quo and leveling up. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and incorporating science and art and conservation and using these big, beautiful brains of ours. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Katrien. Antanas, maybe I can pass over to you next.
Let's see, I've had such a long career as a lot of the people who are on the panel here, but at least for me personally, I've seen the transition, perhaps in the younger generation, less from perhaps denial of climate change overall in the population, denial of climate change, to a sort of doomism, sort of saying that we cannot really do anything anymore and it's too late. And I choose to believe that, whatever we're doing here is worth doing, because it's almost like an investment. Whatever few years we're putting into this project can get the ball rolling on a larger scale and have larger repercussions in the future. So yeah, I just try to see it as making a dent altogether in a big project, in this big issue that we're facing, and hopefully can manage. Yeah.
I love that. That's so profound, and it's about creating and promoting hope, and I think that's really exciting. And working with all of you gives me hope every day. So that's the beauty of these projects. So thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. Fabulous. Sylvia, if you wouldn't mind going next.
Yeah, sure. Well, I would like to take the chance to tell you some events that make me very proud to be involved in such activity as a scientist and as a professor. So both at the level of contributing, developing green solutions, and some times ago, an Italian restorers asked me and my research group to produce a huge amount. At the moment, we are working on green gels. At that time, she was pregnant, and she was not able to work with any chemicals that she used to employ for the treatment. And the only chance was to use our gel that at the moment were in a preliminary phase of study, even if we already tested them, and she already had the possibility to use them. And so we were very happy to produce for her a big amount and allow her to work even during her pregnancy. And another event that made me very proud of doing this job is quite recent. I had the opportunity to attend a workshop at the Central Institute of Restoration in Rome, presenting the results, the scientific results obtained in the frame of GoGreen and another Italian-funded project on the development of green strategies for the treatment of street art artifact. The name is Superstar. So we were presenting the scientific results, and we had the opportunity to organize then a practical workshop. So I had the opportunity to allow the students of the Central Institute of Restoration to use the material we have been developing and asking them their feedback, because we are always very excited as scientists to propose something new, to study the mechanism, to understand the chemistry. But in that moment, I was able to ask them their opinion, to receive feedback, and this was wonderful. So in this consortium, the big strength is the connection between the scientists and the conservators, and the possibility to debate on what are the real issues in the conservation, proposing solutions that can make a positive impact. So I thank you, all of you, for being part of this wonderful project.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I think that's so heartening to hear. And it is, it is so exciting. And I think that's the best part about working on a project like this, is that we get to work together. And sustainability is not something that we should or can do alone. It requires teamwork, it requires collaboration, it requires co-creation. And that's why we're so excited to bring this project to the larger conservation community, because we want you to be as a part of it as we are. So we're really excited for that. So thank you for sharing that. Gwen, can I put you on the spot next?
Sure, thank you. Well, I couldn't agree more with what everyone said, of course. And every time someone says something, I think, oh, that's such a good thing to say. That's such a good point. And I think something Antonis said about, the perspectives now on how one handles the situation. There is a climate crisis, and I think I'm one of the older generation who, maybe when I was training, the aspects of the impacts of what I was using were not really a focus beyond, for the object, perhaps a little bit on human health, but actually not so much either. And in my work here with this project and others, I've seen situations where conservators are really using materials that are very harmful for themselves, potentially, as Sylvia pointed out. And the idea that there should be a possibility to avoid this, to have safer materials for us, for the planet, for the art, that's encompassed in this project is really thrilling to be a part of, and being able to be here and talk about it and research it and disseminate it and hear everybody's ideas, and take everything into account in dealing with this enormous problem. But I'm also very positive that we can make a difference as individuals and as groups, and I think every little helps. So I think as a conservator, when you're looking at your own single decisions, it's the empowerment of knowing that you can make a difference, even if it might seem a small difference. It's all additive. We're all in it together, and every little bit counts.
It's such a good point, and I'm always the biggest proponent of individual agency. And you've I'm sure all seen the expression like, "Oh, it's just one plastic straw," said 3 billion people. And it is every drop in the water can create a ripple effect, and you don't know. It's not just about the impact that you're having in that moment, making that decision to use a straw or to not use a straw, but it's also about the impact that you have on others when they see you make that choice. So I think that's really beautiful. Thank you so much, Gwen, for sharing. And Micah, I know you're not a conservator, but you are a sustainability leader. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I don't have any background in this field. So for me, it's a little bit more difficult to say what everybody else has said, but I do know a little bit about climate change. And I do think, as everybody I think already mentioned, that it is important to at least try to do something. And I think it is very good that with this project, we are doing something. So that's a good thing and a step forward in the right direction.
I couldn't agree more. I think for me, it's always about, you can go to bed at night feeling good because you're trying, and it really does make a difference. I mean, you may not even know what kind of impact you're having, but together, we can have an even bigger impact. So I love that. Thank you so much, Micah. I appreciate that. Edith, I'd love to hear from you, if you don't mind.
It's hard after all this nice comment and so on. But it's 3 years before I forgot to mention where I'm working. Actually, I'm in Switzerland, and I'm part of the Swiss Conservation Restoration Campus. And this question of climate crisis and sustainability is addressed already in our training and courses. And it was if I need to make a small comment, it was funny how the students now are really engaged. And I like to see this small, how you can call it, small star in the eyes when you talk about sustainability and green approaches. And it's true now that they do not want to use any more harmful compounds. If I talk about chemicals, of course, because I talk with them about chemicals. And they do not want anymore to use harmful compound, and we are always saying, yeah, but what we can do more, because at the end we are all part of the same world, right? And why we should fight against environment? So we should fight for it, not against. What would be my conclusion? Well, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, humans are part of nature, just as any other element of nature. And it's important for us to recognize that, embrace it, and, support ourselves by supporting nature. So I think that's a really beautiful, and that goes so well with the work that you're doing with biomimicry and remediation. I love it.
We are living organisms as well.
We are. So we can learn from ourselves and learn from each other. I love that. Fabulous. But Roberta, I'd love to hear from you. Sustainability advocacy.
Yes, thank you. And I agree, of course, with all the previous comments of my colleagues. And I am young researcher and with a few expertise, but but thanks to GoGreen, I have the possibility to know different aspects and expertise within the field of cultural heritage conservation. And actually, I'm growing and within the era of nanotechnology. And I think that thanks to nanotechnologies, we will able to develop new solutions that can be green and sustainable, but act as great material for the conservation of cultural heritage. So to connect these 2 points of conservation. And I think that another thing is it will be great to have the opportunity to talk about the sustainability conservation within museums in order to give this information, this aspect, also to a general community that can appreciate also this aspect about the conservation field.
That's amazing. I love that. And indeed, the nexus of sustainability and technology. I mean, it's all about innovating for the future. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And one of the most exciting parts of having you guys be on the project with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roberta. I love that.
Thank
Dave.
you.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you. Dave, are you still with us? I know that you're under construction, but would love to hear your thoughts if you
Yeah, sure.
wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I mean, just addressing the advocacy side of things, I attended a workshop at the beginning of the month, which was the Getty and the V&A, and it was about sustainability and changing environments and monitoring objects. There's a lot of the things that we talked about, but one of the things that they did, there was a really interesting session about making decisions in the not absence of information, but with limited information, which we all do every day. But at the end of that, he got us to separate ourselves into those people who thought they had agency and could get things done, and those people that didn't. And it's quite a big split. But one of the things that I think came out of it is for those people working in larger institutions, you can change things, but it does take time. And quite often you feel like we have a saying, banging your head against a brick wall. You just have to keep going. But English heritage has changed, and it's changed for the better, but it's not a quick, overnight, fast thing. And I think being amongst a group of very supportive and very intelligent people, as we're lucky to work with, really helps keeping your morale up as you're banging your head, and eventually things do change. So, the advocacy is well worth doing, but it's not a fast thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, going back to community and, support systems. And we talked a little bit about sustainability not being something you do by yourself, but it is so important that you feel that you have allies. And an invitation for anyone out there who doesn't feel like you have allies, you now have 10 right here. And you have, hundreds with people who are interested in this topic around the globe. So feel free to reach out if you need a little extra support, or once again, follow us on socials if you want your daily dose of of green conservation. Just know that you are not alone. I think that's such an important thing, is, to support each other. So thank you so much for that. And Claire, I'd love to let you wrap up here with your thoughts.
Oh, thank you for giving me the very last word. I think that one thing that I would say is that we really notice working with students when they're going out into conservation studios and taking the things that they've learned and going out into a new studio and telling people in that new studio what they've learned, and then those people go out. And so I think every time you're able to advocate for green conservation to any audience, you have to think that every member of your audience can go out and advocate to the next person, and that allows your message to grow exponentially. And so I think that's a really important thing to always remember, that when you can tell somebody about this work, that it's not just that one person you told, but all the other people that they can tell after that. So I think that's just a really great thing to keep in mind every time you're wondering whether you should broach the topic.
I love that. And indeed, it's about creating that ripple effect, because it's not just, what you have an impact on your own life and your own circumstances, but the people around you who can absorb that energy and that knowledge and then pass that on. And, it's always said that, you can throw a stone in the water, but then the ripples can create a wave that can change the course of the ocean. So it really is about collective action and, individual agency, creating change agents, creating change makers, and making this a movement. So we are at time here. I'm so inspired. I hope you all are too. And I would just like to, first of all, thank all of our panelists for being here today. You guys are such an inspiration, and it's so exciting to see the transformation happening from, 5 years ago when we were just talking about green conservation. Like, that's not like, does that go together? And now it's like, not only are we excited about it, but we're making it happen. So I'm just really grateful to all of you guys for being leaders in this space. And a huge, huge thank you to our audience today. I am so grateful that you guys came and joined us, participated. Thank you for your amazing questions. But most of all, thank you for your interest in this topic and for your leadership, because just by being here, you are becoming leaders for sustainable action in our conservation world and beyond, and taking the initiative to make the cultural sector the pivotal leader it needs to be to transform our society and the world. So we're really grateful to invite you all to continue to be part of our Go Green project over the course of the next couple of years. We're going to be endeavoring to help provide resources, information, materials, tools, technologies, methodologies, all kinds of fabulous things. That this is something that we're all going to be doing together. So a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today. A huge thank you to our fabulous panelists and to the conservation community at large for willing to bang our head against a wall, as Dave said, until we make it. So thank you all so much for joining. Please follow us on socials. Check out our newsletter. If you guys need anything, our email is in there as well. Always happy to continue conversations, and we look forward to working together for a greener future. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you